Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda. I hope you are having an incredible, well, it's Monday, so maybe that you had an incredible weekend and that you will have an incredible week ahead. We are wrapping up this year. I just want to remind you if you want to join me in the Alchemy Circle, I do recommend joining before the equinox because that will be our first meeting on December 21st. But our classes officially start in January, and you can learn more about the Alchemy Circle on my website, theenergeticalchemist.com. Aside from that, if you want to know more about the energy of this month and have some more intentionality around how you may be releasing before setting new goals and coming into new alignment for the new year, you can watch on Awakening Airwaves. There is a podcast called Astrology with Erin, and she goes through the energy of the month with all of the astrology, but she also does horoscopes for all 12 signs. So you may want to check that out as well. That could really benefit you. And you can also access my Energy of the Month videos when you subscribe to my newsletter or to Reiki Radio on YouTube. So, aside from all of that, I do want to, my mind just went blank. I am so happy today to share with you this conversation. Another very interesting one. I feel like what we spoke about last week was new to the show, and this conversation will be as well. I sat down with a woman named Maritza Schafer. She is a Bruja, and we talk about liberation magic. And so let me tell you a little bit about Maritza before we get into the conversation. She is the founder of Bruja School, where she teaches the liberation magic method. And we go into more detail about the liberation magic method in this episode. Her teachings center around a simple premise: the secret to life and everything you truly want is spiritual connection, free from religious trauma and new age BS. Grounded in her indigenous Chilean and Mediterranean lineage, Maritza blends ancestral wisdom with practical coaching. She equips people with powerful spiritual tools and real magic to create meaningful lives and bring transformation to their communities. And you can learn more about Maritza and her work at brujaschool.com. The links to her website are down in the show description. But she also has some free gifts for us, for the listeners. So if you go to brujaschool.com/Reiki Radio, there are also some witch work tools there for you. So I'll put that all down in the show description. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, everyone, we are here today with Maritza Schafer of the Bruja School. I want to thank you, first of all, for taking time to have this conversation today.
Oh my God, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's going to be a lot of fun. Your work sounds very interesting. And I know that you are also a Reiki master,
Yeah.
but you are also initiated into this beautiful ancestral lineage of being a bruja from your grandmother, which I want to hear all about. But I wanted to start with, I always like to ask people their story. What
Mhm.
even got you into this recognition of where you are now and this willingness to share so that other people may also see themselves? What started this journey for you?
Wow, that is such a rich question. Um, well, so to me, your question has two parts, right?
Okay.
Basically, how did I get to have the spiritual practice that I do? And then the other question is, and why share it with other people, or why get to a point where that feels like something that I'm motivated to do? And so I grew up in Chile in a family of witches.
Mhm.
Chile is a very Catholic country. There's a small Jewish community. There's the largest Palestinian population outside of the Middle East.
Oh, wow.
There's people from some other religions as well, but the vast majority of folks are Catholic or have a strong Catholic influence. And having said that, there's so many people that might consider themselves Christian, but have also huge influence from other ways of connecting to spirit and nature. So there's a lot of what could be called superstitions that are really ritual or spell casting.
Mm.
There's a lot of other ways of connecting with spirit and nature and our own inner power that doesn't go through the church. And many Catholic people have that. And many people of other religions have that. And I think that's more of my approach. The Bruja, the way I understand a witch, is somebody that could actually have any religion they want in the form of a traditional religion, but it's more also cultural in that it's about learning some practices, some tools, some techniques, some ways of being, thinking, feeling, and acting in the world that allow you to walk a spiritual path. And for me, walking a spiritual path is really about connecting to what really matters, which is everybody having a chance at a decent ride on this rock we call Earth,
Yeah.
and sharing on that, right? So basically, I can tell you more about what that means. But then I started teaching about, well, I've always been teaching some spirituality in different shapes, but I formalized Bruja School about 5 years ago. I was invited by a dear friend to run a workshop on magic at this beautiful retreat center in June of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So needless to say, that had to be moved online, and that format of teaching online worked really well because I could reach people all over the place that maybe didn't have the time or the means to travel, and it's been a beautiful experience. My main offering is a 13-week long program of spiritual tools that I call Liberation Magic, and it's basically the methodology, if you will, of this technology for transformation, right? And
Yeah.
so people usually are curious about magic or spirituality for one of two reasons. Either they're having some sort of crisis or challenge or something in their life that's not quite right and they haven't been able to shift it, even though they really, really want, or they realize that there's more to life than what our daily lives, the context that we live in, at least in the industrialized West, will lead us to believe, right? So basically, what people will sometimes refer to as maybe a midlife crisis or a dark night of the soul. What is the point of all this? What am I here for anyway? A real search for meaning, right? A desire for depth, for connection, for intimacy with oneself and with all of existence and creation. And so those are usually the two ways in that people find my work. And uh, oftentimes it's because whatever it is that they need, they haven't been able to find in what they consider, quote, traditional religions.
Yeah. It's really interesting where it's hearing you describe all of that and it highlights this word, that it seems prominent in your work is liberation.
Yes.
And I want to ask you about that, even that choice of that word and how, because it brings to mind what we all feel bound by, like there is some version of us feeling restricted or stuck or imprisoned even by, and it's coming to mind like the devil card, yeah. And just these thoughts of these invisible even kind of shackles that a lot of us have and don't consciously know why we feel so entrapped. So could you talk a little bit about this importance for you of using magic for our liberation and how that changes our life experience?
Oh, you might regret asking and just you play on me and I'll just like go off. Okay, so the choice of the word liberation was very purposeful
Yeah.
for all of the reasons that you're describing, and also because it has a bit of a political connotation
Mm,
in many contexts. And that's on purpose because a lot of the things that entrap us are not of our own creation, right? Like
yep.
we live within systems and contexts. And so when I think about liberation, I think about two main ways of thinking about it. The first one is more personal. We all have the condition of being human.
Hmm.
And it comes with all challenges and exciting experiences and a vast array of ways of being. And a lot of them are really unpleasant, really uncomfortable. A lot of people that I work with have quite negative self talk. They're completely paralyzed by fear.
Hmm.
They're always worried about money or their health or the future of the earth or their children or something, instead of really embracing the ability to be present and delight in what being human really means.
Yeah.
And the reason that most of us are thinking and being in those ways is because we haven't set up a system externally that encourages that, that fosters or supports that. And instead, we basically set up a real problematic way of living where there's like three white dudes that are hoarding all the money, and everybody else on earth is basically slaves to them in one way or another, right?
Hmm.
And that's been true for a while, but I think that most recently it's become so obscenely apparent, right? There's just no denying it. There's no denying it. And so I think that that's the other thing around the liberation is that, you know, the way, again, we're set up to just work, 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 work. Most of us, not for our own benefit, we can barely make ends meet. There's no space for rest or introspection or connection. I was just reading this thing that really hit me. It was talking about these days we meet with friends to catch up about our lives
Hmm.
because that's all we have time for. We don't meet to live life together. It's like we'll meet every 2 months and be like, oh, I did this and this and this and this and this. What did you do? Okay, great. The coffee's good. Bye. See you again in a few
Right.
months. And it's like as opposed to living in community, right? And collaborating in the co-creation of that life. So that's how I think about liberation. And part of the reason that I called my program Liberation Magic is because, again, I define magic as a technology for transformation, and it's transforming ourselves from being bound by a bunch of things that we can't help and some that we can into a better a version of ourselves that allow us to feel like we're walking in that direction, right? I don't think we arrive at liberation necessarily, but we get closer and closer and we bring other people along with us, ideally.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you this too, and thank you for describing all of that, the intention behind the word. I mean, it makes so much sense. And I think even the way you describe it will give us a lot of kind of like pause and reflection of how are we not free personally? Like what
Yeah.
is the personal impact to what makes us feel not free or our life experience to feel very confined, whatever that may be. But I also have to ask you about your explanation, I guess, of even magic. Because a lot of people have different feelings when they hear that word, and it can mean a lot of different things to different people. So how does that come in terms of, use, lifestyle? What does that mean for you?
Yeah, definitely. Magic for me is a way of living that fully acknowledges all of my being.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is that I have a body, of course, right, that I need to carry around the day and get things done with. And I have a heart, that's where my emotional center lives, that's where my love is, my anger is, my sadness, my grief, my hope, my encouragement, right? I have a mind that is how I hopefully practice my critical thinking abilities and discernment and decision making and analysis and thought and creativity and all of that. And then there's an energetic body, right? Which is what you and I have in common in terms of the energy work that we do, that is none of the above, but all of them in one.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is that recently, I would say in the last couple of decades, there's been a lot more mainstream talk about the mind-body connection, which to me, it's hilarious because it's like saying the hand-body connection. Like, what are you talking? Like, of course, right? And so magic is having the literacy of understanding all parts of yourself the function of them, what makes them work, quote, if you will, better or worse, and collaborate together so that you can have the outcomes that you seek in alignment with spirit, in alignment with the divine order, which I believe to be nature and unseen forces.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it actually leads into what I wanted to ask you. So now, just getting a glimpse, if you can give us, of, growing up in Chile and being, taught in a lot of ways by your grandmother, which a lot of people don't have that type of experience, right? And how fortunate. And I wanted to ask the role that nature plays in what you may have been taught, like the recognition of being in relationship, not separate from earth and the elements and these sorts of things. Was that a big part of what you were brought into or how you were raised?
Yes and no. And what I mean by that is that you only need to be taught that if it's not something that's inherent and obvious.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's kind of
Hmm.
like what I'm saying about, like, the hand body connection. We don't teach about the hand body connection because it's so obvious that the hand is part of the body and they're connected. You know what I mean? And so in terms of nature, I think that many folks, and again, mostly like in cities in the US these days for sure, when they think of nature, they think of this idealized landscape, right?
Right.
That's like the forest with the stream of water or the mountains or the ocean. And those are really beautiful aspects of nature, but nature is also the nature of reality, right?
Hmm.
It's like life as it is embodied and as it is expressed. So nature is the jerk that's honking behind you in the freeway also, right?
Yes.
And everything that happens. And so I think that it's really both about a connection with an understanding that we're intrinsic to the natural world for sure. And it's also about the nature of reality and how we need to accept it first and foremost before we can transform it at all, if that's part of our desire, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a huge part of my teaching as well. It's, the elements, like I talk a lot about earth, air, fire, water, what that means. Is it literally, is it symbolically, how we work with it, all of that, yes. And also the elements of human nature and the elements of the natural environment that we're living in these days that doesn't feel so natural.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, what you're saying, like even with the hand being in relationship to the body, like, hello, I mean, obviously it's connected, yeah. But even you saying that reminds me of, for a lot of people growing up in cities and these sorts of things, it makes me think of even my generation. I think we were probably the last generation. I'm Gen X. I think we were the last generation that got to play outside and, climb trees and go on the creeks and do all these things. And where like some of the younger generations now, they're on electronics and these things where we got to be in nature and be one with each other, even similar to what you were saying about friends and these things. And now a lot of that is being lost. And now sometimes people have to make a conscious effort to connect with or even recognizing their connection to each other and earth. And before it was just a thing, it was just how we lived.
Yes.
And so, that's really interesting too, of thinking of how collectively a lot is shifting away from that. But I guess simultaneously, there are a lot of people and their craving are very intentional about living their life in a way that is helping them to experience whatever oneness means for them. But in all of this, how did Reiki come on the scene for you? So, where in all of this did you start exploring this, I guess, this lens of energy work?
Yeah, the energy work that I grew up doing had its own particularities and flavors, and I can tell you about that in a minute. But
Yeah.
what happened was I moved to the US when I was 18, and I'm gonna say in my early 20s at some point, I had this meditation teacher who was a Reiki master. And so I learned about Reiki through her, and I was like, oh, I know this whole thing. I didn't know that there was like a Japanese version called Reiki, but it's quite analogous to a lot of things that I know about and that I practice. And so at that point, I got my first Reiki attunement from her, and eventually worked my way through becoming a Reiki master and being able to attune people myself. Um, I think Reiki is incredibly powerful, and I feel that whether it's Reiki, whether it's energy work, whether it's whatever gets you closer to, again, the nature of reality, is so important that more people have access to it, because when we're able to regulate ourselves, heal ourselves, connect with our inner peace, connect with our sense of purpose. It's just so much more fun. It's just
Yeah.
so much more pleasant to go through life feeling like all chill and happy rather than like, "Ugh," you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that we don't tend to that part of ourselves often enough, or in ways that really make a difference for us. And so when I learned about it, and that's the other thing about, as I consider myself a bruja, I'm not really, there's no Bible, there's no like set of rules or anything like that. It's basically like a set of tools that can be used. And so you know, found this lineage from Dr. Usui and was able to incorporate it very respectfully, acknowledging that it's not my lineage, but it's something that was offered as a gift for me to carry on. And since then, I've also had that tool in my bag.
Yeah. It's so funny. I literally just before us talking, I had a conversation with another woman who practices the Ifa tradition, and it also came up about this realization that, energy has been a part of, you know, life and understanding and connection through all cultures. And now we have this system, although it's like origin is in Japan, it really does speak to this universal kind of wisdom of our relationship to energy and what that means. And with that too, you've mentioned the nature of reality a few times. I'm like, is she kind of peeking into universal laws too? So when you say that, is that kind of encompassing not just nature in terms of, water, fire, air, earth, but do you tend to, I don't want to say, highlight being in awareness of how the universe itself, how the cosmic is working in our dance within that?
100%,
Yeah.
totally. And I think one way that I've chosen to encompass that in my liberation magic method is that I begin by teaching people three spiritual axioms. I call them the three magical axioms, right?
Yeah.
And the first one is that everything is born, grows, dies, and is reborn, eventually regenerates, right? And so what that means, it sounds so obvious when you say it, but we're talking about a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and then a transformation into a next version of humans, galaxies, systems, corporations,
Yeah.
empires, brands, even if you
Hmm.
will, friendships, right? And I think that's so important in terms of thinking about that as the nature of reality, because if you get really specific about it, nobody really understands life. Like science can only take us so far. It's like nobody really knows why we're here. What's the point? Where did we come from? What's this actual energy that animates all of us, right? But there's an acknowledgement that this cycle that I'm referring to is universal, and when we remember that, it becomes so much easier to work with that, because I think there's a huge emphasis on the first half of that circle, if you will, in our culture. It's like new things and growth and like bigger, better, more. And it's like, yeah, and eventually it needs to be less, and it needs to be, there's the seasons for a reason. You can't expect flowering trees in the winter when they're not meant until the spring,
Yeah.
etc. Right? So again, it's quite obvious once you say it, but I think that in our context, we're so disconnected from that, right? And so there's a real reconnection to that. The other two things that I talk about is that paradox is life's organizing principle, right? I think that in our culture, we want things to be black or white, yes or no, good or bad. And we're seeing that today more than ever, Yolanda, with the polarization of everything. And we see how well that's working, right? Like
Right.
we're really in trouble
Yeah.
because we're ignoring that between white and black, there's all the colors of the universe.
Yeah.
And that's where the potential, the love, the energy, all of the pretty things, right, can emerge from. And it's because we chase this illusion of certainty. We want to make damn sure that we're going to be okay, that I'm going to get the paycheck, that my family is going to be healthy. And like we know from the first axiom, that's probably not always going to be the case. We
No.
are probably going to experience struggle at some point. We're probably going to experience illness at some point. So the expectation of everything being fine all the time brings so much suffering,
Yeah.
right? And then finally, the third axiom I teach is that speaking truth is a path to liberation, right? And so without acknowledging where we're at, why we got here, and the power that we have to get elsewhere, we can be liberated. And that applies in so many contexts, in so many different situations. But that's just like one example is that I think, I always joke, if there's no problem, there's no solution,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So right now, we are at the macro level, say, we're struggling with political systems and climate change and the uses of AI and all of these things that are really scary. And if we don't see that the underlying system that allowed for all of this is the problem, we're going to keep playing whack-a-mole looking for solutions that are not it. And so
Right.
just like let's speak the truth as it is, and then we have a shot, right? Otherwise, whether it's denial or misunderstanding or whatever it might be, it's like seeing things clearly is so important.
That's a very interesting thing because I always think in this path, that's often one of the hardest things for people is the truth.
Yeah.
Like just seeing and acknowledging what that is, just even down to, for ourselves, like starting to really recognize the truth of, what has caused us harm or what our interaction has been with what our life experiences have been, the power of our own perspectives, our own stories, the admission of what has really been playing through our system is often one of the hardest things for people to it seems to be like what often cracks us open when we can finally surrender to it. Or for many people, it's the catalyst, like something about life will just slam you into the wall where you can no longer deny. And then the truth is all that's left. And then here goes the quest, the journey of then what is this life? Right? It's very, very interesting. But I wanted to make sure to ask you, even about this. I know in your work you talk about how tension blocks our
Yeah.
transformation.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know if you could share a little bit more about that so people can start ruminating on
Yeah.
how this may be affecting them.
Oh, this is so annoying. This is so annoying because usually when there's something that we're not happy about or that we are hoping to change, we're not like in acceptance of it. We're not really relaxed about it. We're like, what the hell? Why is this? Right? And like the more we rage against it, the harder it gets to actually make the shift
Mm,
because the transformation happens by shifting your energy, and it happens by being in an altered, if you will, state of consciousness, right?
mm,
And so first of all, energy, just from physics, the less resistance there is to it, the easier it will flow. This is true
yeah.
of like water. If there's a dam, it's not going to flow. You remove the dam, think about that as the tension, right? Then it keeps flowing. Same is
Yeah.
true of electricity. Same is true of light when I draw the shades down, right? So the tension is what stops our own energy from flowing freely.
Mm,
And I have found and observed that when energy flows freely, when we're in a relaxed state, it's a lot easier to work with it
Yeah.
because we're not forcing anything. We're just allowing and guiding and directing and shaping rather than like pushing shit uphill, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And the other thing, of course, is that when we are going to make a change, whether it's on our attitude or our income or our health or whatever, the state that we're in is the state that we're in, right? Obviously.
Hmm.
So the state that we want to be in, if that's different, it means that, I mean, again, it's so all cliches are cliches for a reason, right? But like if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so if
Right.
you're having a story about how I'm so broke and I'm so scared, or why am I never gonna get out of this situation, or why does my foot still hurt, or whatever it is, you're putting so much attention on that. You're not allowing your attention to flow to the infinite other possibilities that might be way more pleasant, positive, more what you want than what you're focusing on. And so I started this by saying it's so annoying because when we're in it, and we've all been in it, right?
Yeah.
Like when the humans are in it being like our own shit, it seems like it's impossible to shift it because it's so overwhelming and the emotion can be so intense. And I think that one tip I have is that feel it all the way. You're not going to be able to avoid that, right?
Hmm.
And so the sooner you decide that you're seething and grieving and all of it and allow yourself to go through it, the sooner you're going to be able to reach a different state. I say that because I find that a lot of people are like, oh, don't be angry. Like, you should be like thinking positive. And I'm like, yes. And like, yes, thinking positive is absolutely indispensable, but not if it's back to your point of denying your own truth, not if it's not true,
Right.
right? So you need to get yourself to that place. Um, anyway, yeah.
No, but it goes so beautifully with what you were speaking about before with the dam. Like, and I think that's the part that people have a hard time wrapping their mind around. And especially because in this realm there is so much emphasis on like positivity and if you are a high vibe and all these things, I think there's a lot of confusion around really what that's about and how to create a real shift in our frequency, not just lip service, not just saying I'm positive and I'm happy, but literally, how do I, like you say, like lift the dam, let this anger, frustration, whatever it is, move so that I can actually create the pathway to my liberation. Look at this coming full circle with your work, Maritza. Okay. No, but that was really, really great. I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you. Now, the other thing in this, I think, is so powerful about your work is how you give emphasis to the importance of our focus, our
Mhm.
attention.
Yeah.
So, could you talk a little bit about that and why that's so important to how we're living?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, if our attention wasn't valuable, the tech bros would not be devoted to finding ways to keep us doom scrolling,
Right.
right? Like, if nothing else, if you need like concrete evidence of like, what does that even mean? That's what it means. Like, your attention is being monetized
Hmm.
every day.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe in a spiritual aspect of yourself, there is material evidence there, right? That your attention is incredibly valuable because it's basically the most sacred aspect of yourself is like the choice of where to have my human experience at every given moment. That's what I mean by attention. It's directing your awareness to what is going on. And so, for example, I'll speak for myself, but I know many people are in this situation. It is so incredibly difficult to not give my attention right now to the dumpster fire that is the news
Hmm.
because it's incredibly compelling and terrifying. And I
Yeah.
feel like I need to know. And the reality is that I do need to know, but not to the extent that they want to keep us hooked, right? And so then it becomes if I had some of that attention, and put it elsewhere where I get to choose where, right? Into my relationships, into my business, into my health, into my community, my neighbors, my vision for the world, then what would happen? And so this is where people get a little bit confused because they think magic is very esoteric, and I think it can be in some ways, but it's incredibly practical. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, no, no. We're talking about like material changes on planet Earth, right? And this, I think, I wanted to make a comment quickly about your positive thinking thing and like the whole spiritual bypassing. That's one of my pet peeves. I think it's super easy to keep high vibes, quote, if you're a trust fund kid. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot harder to keep high vibes when your circumstances are crap. And
Yes.
so I think that that's why I was talking about earlier the importance of just facing the truth. I
Hmm.
think that you can have good or bad vibes in any and all circumstances. Like, I think that there's some people in some horrendous circumstances that are incredibly grounded, that are positive, that keep hope, that transform their lives because of their attitude. And I think that there's people that are, I mean, it's like the classic, sad little rich kid. There's like so many of those people. And so it's neither here nor there. It can be you can have any sort of situation with any sort of response to it.
Right.
What's important is to acknowledge it and not tell people, oh, you haven't gotten your mansion because you did your vision board wrong, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have the right energy. That's just some bullshit. And so, and I also deeply in my heart believe that those practices will transform your material reality. Eventually, I do believe that if you want a mansion on your vision board, that can happen. You can
Mm-hmm.
make that happen. But it's not the only thing it's going to take, right? So I
Yeah.
think that this idea of really understanding all of the components of what's at play in your life and in your community at any given moment is critical.
Yeah. I like this because it brings the awareness of how this really is these practices are it's really about a lifestyle. It really is the way we are living. It is the way that we are, you know saying hello to the neighbor or not. It's this full blown expression, and not just I'm nice to the people at the yoga studio and then that's where, you know what I mean? Or I'm not just in practice if I'm laying hands on someone, but that real understanding, which I think hopefully is becoming louder in this realm now, that it's much deeper than perhaps has been. What initiates a lot of us into this can tend to be very surface. And then if we have that focus and attention that you speak of, then it's like, the walls start cracking and we start seeing the truth underneath it all. And going back to even again, tying in all that you've said, you start to have this realization you can't run from the truth. You can't. And then it just becomes, are you going to deal with it or you're not? Like, what are you going to do? Like,
Right.
what are you going to do? So this too, and I'm just trying to like get through because you have so many beautiful layers to your work, and I want to make sure we get to talk about all of it. You also talk about the difference between us working with energy versus energy work. So
Correct.
just if you could clarify and paint a picture for us about that.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a great question. The way I think about it is um, energy work. I think Reiki is definitely a modality of energy work, right? So
Mhm.
what happens is, and please chime in because I know this is your practice as well. You're working with somebody and they have a particular energy and you're trying to work with it, right? Shifted in some ways, grounded in some ways, depending on what's required at the moment. So that's energy work because there's energy there that I'm working with for the benefit of this person. Working with energy is energies that are present and available within myself, in you, in the context around me, in my friends, in my environment that I can work with, right? And
Mhm.
so basically, the way I think about energy work is like working with the energy of an individual, um, and working energy is taking the energies that are available and working with them for a particular purpose. And
Mhm.
it can be as simple as um, clearing the space in your living room before you have friends over so that you have a very pleasant evening. You're working with that energy and clearing it, right? All the way to spell casting and working with other energies to have more potent outcomes
Yeah,
in real life. Does that make sense?
it does. It's interesting that you say because this is something I focus on a lot. There's
Uh-huh.
something else you said I want to jot down, I want to ask you about. But I focus a lot on when I first came into the practice of Reiki, the way that it was presented to me was very kind of an externalized thing, like working with other people and balancing their energy, these sorts of things. And I literally was just saying this to someone. I think it's incredible the way for the simplicity of the method and how effective it is, and now being, you know, used as a complementary in more traditional environments like hospitals and these sorts of things. I think it's incredible.
Yep.
But over the last, I don't know how many years, my focus of it has been more, but what does it do for you? Like what does the system show you about the type of frequency that you can start to cultivate and develop within yourself? And like, what is the real purpose then behind that? Not just this externalized thing. So what you're saying is, yeah, that's exactly what my curiosity is around the system itself, but also what all of these systems I think are pointing to, whether it's religion, spirituality, everything that's been practiced, right? I think it's all been trying to point us to the same thing. We just, I don't know what we do with things, but it's all part of the learning, I guess. But in that, you've mentioned the word spell casting a few
Mhm.
times. And I'm very curious who your point of view is around this, like how you work with that. And
Yeah.
is this something that you feel can or should or can, and not can, but should be only used on ourselves? Or like, can you do spell work for others? What is your belief around all of that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I get it often enough. So, spell casting is basically a small, well, or not necessarily small, but let me start over. Spell
Okay.
casting is a ritual, okay, where you are aligning your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and your divine self, higher self, or supraconscious mind with, back to the previous question, the energies that you're working with.
Yeah.
It could be air, fire, water, earth. It could be east, south, west, north. It could be colors. It could be numbers. It could be smells or scents. There's all kinds of things that we can use as energies to work with in order to achieve a particular outcome,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're talking about magic as a technology of transformation. So spellcasting is just one of the tools that are part of the magical repertoire. And so basically, if you think about it, if I want something and I don't have it, obviously because something is in the way of that, right? And so we've already talked about the importance of acknowledging your context and the reality of where you're at and see what's getting in the way in that way. And many times it's because there's something within me that is blocking that, right? So I always joke like if I have this red shirt on and I want to wear a blue shirt, I take this off, put the blue one on, I change shirt. Like that does not require magic, right? Like I just do it. And so I say magic is for when everything that you could think of is not working and you're basically at the end of your rope. You don't have to wait to be desperate to work magic, but magic works best when you've tried all of your other avenues and are out of ideas, because that's usually when there's a misalignment within you between the levels of your consciousness or within the energies that are influencing your life. And so the spell is a ritual that is designed to bring all that back into alignment. And so when that's realigned in that way, there's the space and the energy, if you will, for your desire to actually manifest. And so I teach people how to do that.
That's beautiful. All right, Maritza, this this interestingly then brings more curiosity around one of the staple programs that you provide. So I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but you have the Liberation Magic Method in your Bruja School, and there are different times of year when, people can enroll to be a part of this. Could you talk a little bit about what happens behind the doors at the Bruja School? What is the Liberation Magic Method, the program? What is it about?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, a lot of what I've talked about today are bits and pieces of the
Yeah.
Liberation Magic Method. The Liberation Magic Method is basically all of my experience and wisdom in spirituality and magic, captured in a way that you can understand and practice. And so I teach people about the different elements, the different kinds of energy, the different levels of consciousness. The three magical axioms that we already discussed, and most interestingly, how you can use all these things to improve your life, to improve the life of your community. And
Mm,
so we do that in a circle of people that come together for this purpose. There's ritual, there's spell casting, there's meditation, there's energy work, all of the things that people are usually quite curious about, we cover as well. But it's really about giving you very practical tools to reconnect with your inner self and with spirit and with whatever conception of the natural world or reality you might have, so that you have a sense of purpose, of belonging, of agency, empowerment in pursuit of your liberation.
okay. So I just want to tell everyone that you will have doors opening again for the next cycle of this in the spring. But we'll put the link, of course, to the website and everything where we can learn more. But another thing about your work that really stands out, and you've said this word a few times as well, is community.
Yes.
And, I think the concept of healing in of itself is very interesting in the different layers where there are some aspects of it that have to be done very much alone. Like there are some parts of our healing only we can contend with. Then there are the layers of it that we're so fortunate if we have community and communal support. But then I also think when I think of that word, how much a lot of us don't realize the impact, the influence we have of just existing in this world and how that is, played out in community, whether we intend it to or not. So I wanted to ask you that, Maritza, how important community is in the work that you do and, why that's such an inspiration for you.
Yeah, well, I think community is absolutely critical for a few reasons. First, humans are social beings.
Hmm.
We die in isolation. We do not thrive in isolation. And I totally agree with you that there's a part of healing that's a very individual process. And in my experience, it's usually completed in community,
Hmm.
in finding other people that have had similar experiences that can offer us their support or their tips for how they made it through, or might have just the presence to be with us. So as
Yeah.
we go through it, we don't have to go through it alone, right?
Right.
So that's like the first thing about community. The other thing is that one of my pet peeves is that I see, particularly in the online world, there's a lot of focus on spirituality as like an empowerment hack, or like how to get your life to be of your dreams with these spiritual tools, which is extremely annoying because it's not true. Like, it is completely true that using spiritual tools, your life will get better. 100%. I'm like, this is what I peddle. I believe it to be true. And if it's just for you, it's gonna be effed in a
Hmm.
humongous way for many reasons. Because until you realize that a huge part of the purpose of life is to support and love each other, right? Um, the thing may not work because you might get all of, you might have all your ducks in a row, check all the boxes, and still be miserable, because spirituality, again, in this incarnated version of spirit, is not for me, it's for us.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is that when people are chasing the whatever it is, like the partner, the money, the health, and they want to find better ways to get to their desires, they also realize that those desires in isolation mean nothing if you don't have people to share it with, and people
Yes.
that will root for you, and people that you will root for them. Um, it might work for a while on paper, but sooner or later, it doesn't really fly. And the irony is that the more I focus on my community and supporting others, my experience anyway, is that the faster things get better for me. You
Yes.
know what I mean? So that's if you need to think about it in the most selfish way, it's in your best self-interest to be community oriented, if nothing else, right?
Yes. Oh, honey, I agree with you 1,000%. It's funny. My community group that I work with is called the Alchemy Circle. And I always joke with them that there was a time where a friend of mine and I, many years ago, she and I would get together to channel every day and like just practice together. And we always say, I don't know how we would have gotten through those first years of healing if we didn't have each other. It was just like, thank goodness somehow the universe aligned for us to have support in walking this path, especially at the beginning. But we would get like, downloads and information as we're practicing. And we would always get this message, this is not just for your notebook.
Yeah,
Like, as to say, this is not just for the two of you. And to this day, we never have shared what came through those things. But I always tell people that story, remind them like, as you are growing, as you're learning, as you're expanding, it's not just for your notebook. And whether it's like, we can lay hands and have sessions, it's not limited to that. Again, it's like, how are we in community? How are you when you walk down the street? How are you when
yeah,
in all expressions of who you are? So yeah, I not only agree with you, I think it's such a beautiful thing when we have these spaces where people understand we're all working towards the same goal, but there's just a certain kind of magic and energy when we come together to support each other in these ways. I am
totally. Yolanda,
loving
I'm
this.
dying to
Yeah.
ask you a question. So did
Yeah.
you mention you got all this stuff on your notebook, and and it's just still there, even though the message was it's not just for the notebook?
Yeah,
What
well, funny
happened?
enough, yeah, well, my friend and I back then, we would joke like, well, what are we supposed to do with it? We didn't know how to share it with people.
Uh-huh.
So again, this is many years ago. We were like, okay, but what are we supposed to stop people on the street and be like, hey, do you want to know what we know? And it's funny, I just said this like last night in the Alchemy Circle. We were joking about this, and I said, that's actually what this group
Amazing.
became. So now, without realizing that's what I was doing, that's the space where I share the notebook, so to speak, you know?
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is why I get excited having conversations with people like you that are also, I think it's such a gift that we all share what we're learning on these paths and we all can share what, through our experience, what's really highlighting for us. So to hear you have this blend of like Reiki and this very like ancestral wisdom and magic that have come together in your life expression and now sharing that and the language that comes with that and the texture, the feeling that comes with that.
Yeah.
How lucky we are
Yeah,
that we get to have these very, communal conversations.
totally.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you as well. I know on your site, I saw that people can also get readings from you. So how did this come into your life, the tarot work? And is there any kind of, I want to say, different lens you have about tarot than what people typically talk about?
Um, yeah, I've been working with the tarot for ever, I think. And what I usually tell my clients when they come for a reading is that the tarot is a divination tool.
Hmm.
And what I mean by divination is a way of connecting with the divine aspect of ourselves or whatever understanding we might have of divinity that is wiser than we are aware of in our conscious minds and that has our best interest at heart, but that we're not usually connected to because life in the 21st century, right?
Yeah.
And also being a human. And so sometimes what happens is that I will do a reading, and then a few weeks or days later, people are like, "Oh my God, how did she know?" And I'm like, "I didn't know anything. What happened was we gave you an energetic snapshot of where you were at in the parts of yourself that you don't usually have conscious access to.
Yeah.
And then you saw it play out, and it seemed like, there was some sort of like knowing ahead of time, but it wasn't ahead of time. It was exactly in that moment. The cards told you that as a channel again for divine wisdom, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So don't come expecting to be told what's going to happen in the future. Come expect, although sometimes it feels that way, but that's not on purpose at all. It's because you get such clarity about your current moment that then you have a lot more discernment and a lot more information from which to make decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that lens and that point of view. It's another thing, just like with all of this work, it's so incredible that, you can take one system, one method, one divination tool, and it be used so creatively in so many different ways. And I
Yes.
have to say again, Maritza, I feel like in this very short window of an hour, you have shared so much wisdom with us, and I really, really appreciate it. Before we go, I just want to let everyone know again that you can connect with Maritza through her website, which is brujaschool.com. And of course, I'll have the link down in the show description. How can we find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm at maritza.a.schafer. And so you'll see the link to see how that's spelled. But also, you can subscribe to my liberation letters. Every Wednesday, I send out um, a brief email with magical tips and perspectives and practices to make your life a little bit more magical. So you can find
That's
me there as
incredible.
well.
So, with the liberation letters, do we subscribe to that through the website?
Yes, and the
Through
link that we're sharing with everybody who's listening. So we have
yes.
some free gifts specially prepared for you all.
Yes, so you will see down in the show notes there is a link for Witch Work Tools. So you want to make sure to click on that and get the liberation letters and the free gifts so generously offered by Maritza. I have to tell you, it was a pleasure meeting you today, and I thank you so much again for coming to have the conversation.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. That was great.
Yes, and for everyone, we will see you soon. Bye for now. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Maritza and I for this incredible conversation. I think it's interesting the way we are wrapping up the year. I have really enjoyed all of the conversations this year and this season on Reiki Radio, and I hope you have as well. Don't forget if there are topics or people that you think would be great guests, you can recommend them to reach out to me to be interviewed on Reiki Radio, or make sure you just share the podcast. That helps a lot as well. And I can't tell you how many people say they go back in the archives and start from the beginning, which still blows my mind. But in any case, I'm so thankful for you all being here, and it has been an incredible year thus far. And if you want to join me in the Alchemy Circle for all of 2026, go to theenergeticalchemist.com, register. Don't miss out this year. And be sure to learn more about Maritza and her work at brujaschool.com. And you can get her witch work tools for us here on Reiki Radio. Go to brujaschool.com/Reiki Radio. I hope you have an incredible week. I will see you all very soon. And remember to always journey in love.